Well, I was going to talk some politics, but I'll give you a break. Yeah, it's a weekend. But I thought, actually, before I started this, I should have went and looked. Well, you see that tree line? That right there is where that North Country Trail goes. And I don't want to be yammered away and have somebody walk by. Usually I have a bit of a warning because you can kind of hear chattering as they come. You know, it's usually not one person. But I hadn't thought about that when I put the loom here. I put it here because I figured, okay, I got shade from that big oak tree for most of the day, but I don't want to be underneath an oak tree because right now all the acorns are falling, so you'd be constantly getting hammered by them. So I stuck it here. But it does remind me, you know, speaking of the trail there, back when I was doing shows, when they first set the trail up, I had been to a show and I had got, you know, I always brought a loom along, and it had got kind of damp. It had rained. And the warp rolls up on the back, you know, on a pretty big, and I wanted to make sure and get that dried out, or what I wanted to do is to use that warp up and put new warp on for the next show. So I set the loom up just down the fence line a ways, but it was along that trail. And it was there for a few days, and I used up that warp. Then I took it down again, and I heard later from the trail people, oh, they were disappointed that the loom was gone. You know, they liked having it there, you know, to drive, to walk by and see what I was doing, how much was gone. So I'm sure they'll be delighted to know this one is here, but it'll only be here for a short time. Yeah, chickens don't, when I start talking, them chickens got to start. What I'm doing here is tying the fringe on the ends. You tie like 8 strings together in a knot and push it up. And it's funny because, you know, technically I'm left or right-handed, but I do tend to do these with my left hand. It's just a habit I got into. But it worked. And I can do it rather rapidly. Because it used to be, like I say, when I do it at shows, I'd set up that real old loom and I'd weave all day. And during the day I could make like 8 rugs. But I would generally be selling them as fast as I could make them. People want the one that you were working on. So as soon as I'd finish one, I'd have to take it off the loom, get it tied because there was somebody waiting on it. So I developed that method of tying. Now here's something I hadn't thought about. The string that I used on this is just mixed colors. random, well, random in groups of 24. But the reasoning there, I'm using up partial spools. You know, like your warp when it's new, comes on a spool. Actually, this is like a 3/4 spool. But when you get down to these small spools, you know, as you use it up, I like to use them in a multicolored mix on these short runs, which is what I do on this type of loom. I don't load these too big or you get uneven tension. Some of my other ones you can load really full. But now, looking at the colors, I see I've got kind of a rainbow assortment, so that maybe would be a selling feature for the LGBTQ whatever the hell crowd. You tend to kind of roll the edge on these kind of scissors. You can roll her back with a knife. But I'm constantly thinking, yeah, somebody's going to come by at any time. In fact, I had heard voices a while ago, and so yeah, I was a little nervous, but it was the some cousins trying to get into the main pasture and trying to figure out how come the lock wasn't the same. So I had to explain what went on there. The other lock had finally just broke or ceased to function. So somebody had put a different lock on there. And they couldn't figure out where the key was. So I went over and rescued them. Explained the situation. The only, you know, I do so much work with my fingers. My fingers are smooth. It's like they're sanded. It's sometimes hard to get a grip on a string. And I got one more to tie. Oh, and you'll notice this is a new shirt. You know, it's the same as, you know, I had mentioned this before. People would think, you wear the same clothes every day. Well, no, I have, you know, like those red plaid shirts. I've got, oh my, I must have a half dozen of them, you know, all the same. I've got maybe 4 of the blue ones, and a couple of gray ones, and I think a green or 2. You know, but it's all the same, exact same style and manufacture. Well, I was in town yesterday. I looked because I had seen in the flyer that these were on sale. So I went to look at them. And here they had brown ones, so I bought 3 of them. So I'm breaking one in. So they'll be in the rotation from now on. But what I thought was funny, when I went up to the checkout, I must have had like $300 worth of stuff. And part of it was that $100 battery. But then the checkout woman says, "Would you like to save $60 by filling out some application for their, must be credit card kind of, they all have their own thing. So just for filling out, she would give me $60 off." Well, I said I'd like $60 off, but I don't want to do it that way. I don't do that. And she said, even if you get rejected, you would get the $60 off. Well, I really don't want to get in their system. I don't want to sell my soul for $60. And I would be very surprised if I was not rejected. I would expect to. I would certainly hope to be rejected. It's hard to explain. I try to be invisible to those kind of agencies. I know one time, what was it? Oh, dealing with the phone company with Verizon. And the guy looked it up and he said, I've never come across this before. It's like you don't exist. I thought, well, that's great. That's wonderful. That's what I want to hear. I don't need to have a record of me in anybody's system. Like I say, to me, $60, it ain't worth losing my anonymity. Yeah, close. The word I don't have to say. Because I really don't want to be. I one day had an email from the Social Security Administration. And I thought, boy, I didn't know they had my email. That wasn't a good sign. But it was some program where if you qualify, they will give you, somehow it's like, it's some kind of a phone program where they, it's like the Obama phones, where they'll give you $30 toward your phone bill every month or some such thing like that, And they're promoting some particular phone thing that only costs $30 a month, so your phone would be free. So the government would have access to everything. I don't need that. I can pay for my own phone. I just thought that was a surprise, and I have to realize now that they do have my phone or my email address. But that's, I actually have 2 phones, and I've got 2 email addresses. And like this number, only 1 person has that. Okay, now this I talked about before too. What I'm making is, I'm not making any particular length, I'm just making until I feel like calling it quits on one. But this is where I talked about this, the divine proportion. And this is, I don't remember what the number is now. I roughly go by, things should be a rectangular shape. They feel right in a rectangular form. Like a square book would be weird. Humans are kind of wired for this certain proportion called the divine proportion. It's more involved than that, but if you make a rug that is as wide as it is long, so if this rug was only that long, that'd be a very hard sell. My theory always is that they need to be at least 1.5 times the width, which would be this. See, that's right. That feels right for a normal human being. There's nothing harder to sell than you can sell a long rug, but a square rug is a hard sell. Well, I'll talk about that too. Somebody said about that I should put them on eBay. Well, okay, I have done that in the past, and I have been on Etsy. And there's always a possibility, but although I buy a lot on eBay, eBay is not a seller's market. eBay has changed. It's kind of awkward dealing with them. And plus they are into this whole thing of ratting you out to the government every time you sell something. In the first place, they got to have a cut of it. And then they get involved in the sales tax. Really you should have a tax permit for every state that you do business in, which is very awkward. I ran into that with Etsy even. You're supposed to have all this permit stuff, which just leads to endless amounts of paperwork. So I kind of lost interest. Well, I'd have to say Etsy kind of went away from me when they started doing that. They used to be a privately owned company, and they were pretty good. They were promoting small artists doing original stuff. But then they got to be public, and the rules started changing. Then it could be, originally it had to be you or somebody in your family. Well, then pretty soon it could be, you could be hiring people to do it. When it got to be where all you had to do was it was your design, even if you had other people making it, and they went a bad direction with that. And then they started a whole, they got to rat you out to the government. And their fees went up. They have to charge a certain fee. Originally they were good. They were a good outfit to work with. I'm willing to pay a certain fee, to be able to list stuff on places like that. But then they just kept wanting more. It's not unusual. I mean, the big plan always for people is if they can make money off somebody else's labor or somebody else's idea, you know, they want to be able to sit back and click on a keyboard, and that's how they make their money. I don't like to be involved in them. But it's the big dream of everybody. I guess I can set up a stand here along the fence line and sell rugs to the hikers. You know, I'll think about it. Like I say, my intention is to make them to send if my sister needs them for shows. But it's a possibility. But like I say, I don't like dealing with those outfits. You know, you're charged a fee for listing them, and a fee if you sell them. And then, of course, like I say, they ratchet out to the government. And I think it's down to, what is it, like $600 a year or something is the rat line, you know, where they squeal on you. You know, I really, I have to wonder how some of these companies, you know, I buy stuff, like I got a ignition switch coming from India that I need for a particular bike because they make a British style old school switch that I need for this bike of the future. And they are selling it at like $10 free shipping from India. So there must be, you know, some agreement with the shipping company. I don't know how they can do it, you know, because it used to be like when I would list stuff on Etsy for sale, I would get a lot of inquiries from people, like even up in Canada. It was impossible to ship up into Canada. Or I know one time somebody from New Zealand wanted something. There was no way in the world I could ship it to New Zealand. It was cost more to ship than the rug cost. You know, you can't work like that. I mean, that's what our State Department should be. You know, the idea of the State Department was to try to promote trade, but they don't. They try to discourage trade. So that doesn't work. So you gotta jump through hoops. But like I say, this one, real close to the proportion. This one, slightly longer, but that's all right. The slightly longer doesn't hurt you. It's that shorter that makes a normal human being a little uneasy. It's a funny thing, but it's a very true thing. And I don't know where this falls, probably somewhere in between them two. And I got another one started. And then I'll be done with that rag ball. But I got another rag ball. Well, I got a lot of rag balls. So I'll go to work on that. I think I'll leave her there. What I've got, ooh yeah, 24 minutes and 26 seconds. Finish this beer and go back to work. She had pretty well stayed out of politics. Veered a little into the State Department. But it is unfortunate that you can't really do, well, I guess I could, you know, like I said, I could do it, but I don't know that I need that headache of dealing with selling online. Or like people, oh, you could set up your own website. Don't care to. Just more mumbo jumbo. I don't want to get involved in. I'll sell to the hikers. So it makes me a little concerned that I should maybe move the loom. Not that hard to do. I'm sitting on this rather large ash platform that I made a while back, and I can just slide it, the tractor, the bale point forks underneath, and move it anywhere I need it. But usually there isn't a lot of traffic on the trail, except for weekends, which we're in a weekend, so it could happen. And I know there was some through yesterday, but I managed to avoid them. But I'm sure they'll be glad to see the loom again, or a loom. It's not the same one, but a loom. Maybe have to grab another one and finish my tie-in. And a little weaving now that that oak tree has provided me with good shade. It got a little hot here earlier. I got from the pine tree to the oak tree, there's a little gap, and the sun is blazing right down on me. So that I went and worked on motorcycles. Well, I'll finish tying these. Because they are, you know, like when they're on the loom, they're under a certain amount of tension, quite a little tension in fact. Like normally, like say if I'm going to weave a rug 30 inches long, if I want the finished rug to be 30 inches long, I have to make it 33 because there will be 3 inches that it will pull together after it comes off the loom. Well, if you leave a rug sit without being tied, it doesn't pull together as well. So it's better to have them tied and then let them rest. But it's about 1 inch for every 10 inches, depending on the material, depending on the loom. It's a tricky thing to make to a certain size, but I have a bit of a knack for it. After doing thousands of them, you develop a knack. But before I shut it off, I will show you, if I can. See, that is the platform that it is on. Of course, pine tarred, ash boards and pine tarred. But it is sitting up on blocks, so I can just slip the bale forks under it if I have to move it. So see, portable. But right over there is a hiking trail. And there is a big gap where they get a good shot at the loom. I was a little hesitant when I had guns out here earlier. I don't think I got a couple of minutes on this thing yet. I will show you. Okay, that, you know, is the hiking trail. They come through with a brush mower and mow it. But, ooh, grapes. I got a lot of grapes again this year. So, I still got jam that I made last year. Maybe wine. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe go with wine. Or at least make grape juice, and I can always make wine.